This
Declaration.
conference will now be recorded.
Due to the nature of the declaration of a state of emergency due to novel coronavirus, COVID-19, pursuant to State Code 2.2-3708.2, this meeting is to be held by electronic communication via the web platform GoToMeeting. The catastrophic nature of this declared emergency makes it impractical and unsafe to assemble a quorum in a single location. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue the operations of the public body. And now I'll turn it over for roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, VPAC members. This is Leah Vihu. I will be taking roll call. At this time, you may take a moment to unmute your mics. I will be calling both primary and alternate members for attendance purposes. Should you encounter technical or volume issues, please type your name into the chat box for our records. Chair Pennington has called the meeting to order, and his attendance has been noted. Please indicate your presence by saying here when your name is called. I'll continue with localities, beginning with Caroline County. Citizen Representative Kevin Whiteman. For Stafford County, Vice Chair Brian Goosh.
Here.
Alternate Yamina Jordan. Citizen Rep Stephen Littlewood. For Spotsylvania County, Jacob Pastwick.
Good evening. Here.
Thank you. Citizen Rep for Spotsylvania County, Kristen Harding. For the City of Fredericksburg, Mr. Eric Nelson. For King George County, Chris Clark. For Virginia Department of Transportation VDOT, Ms. Linda Lasut. Thank you. For National Park Service, Kirsten Tucken Spalding.
Present.
Thank you. For Friends of the Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail and Potomac Heritage Trail Association, Mr. Jim Lynch.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everybody.
Thank you. For Fredericksburg Trails Alliance, or Fred Trails, Rob Maple.
Present.
Thank you. For Fredericksburg Cyclist Club, Spotsylvania Greenways Initiative, and Virginia Bicycle Federation, Stan Huey.
Here.
Thank you. For GW Ride Connect, Ms. Lee Anderson.
Here.
And Disability Resource Center, Deb Fultz.
Here.
Thank you. And for Friends of the Rappahannock, or for Mr. Adam Lynch.
Here.
Thank you. Roll call has been taken. Please put your mics.
Leah, Chris Clark, King George County is present. I'm having audio issues. I had to switch devices.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I will take note of that. Roll call has been taken. Please put your mics back on mute unless recognized by the chairman to speak. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. First, I'd like to welcome Stephen Littlewood and John Leisher and Yamina Jordan from Stafford County as citizen reps and at-large reps to the committee. The first item of business today is the approval of the February 4th, 2020 BPAC meeting agenda. Before we get started, I would like to mention that under item 7B, the members are no longer pending as they got approved by the Stafford Board of Supervisors last night, and I just welcomed them to the committee. So if we could strike 7B, and that's the only amendment I have to the agenda, if there is any other discussion.
I move that we accept the agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended, striking part 7B. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The agenda is approved.
Mr. Pennington, who
Yes.
seconded that, please? Who seconded that motion?
Yep, that's Jacob Hasblick, Spotsylvania County. Thank you.
Thank you. Please identify yourselves.
Thank you. Second item of business tonight is the approval of the December 3rd, 2020 BPAC meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on the minutes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Jim Lynch. I would like to amend my comments at the end of the meeting. They did not come across quite accurately, and if it's okay with everybody, I would like to copy my proposed amendment into chat, and I will try to do that right now if I can figure that out. Here we go. The comment I made as it was as it was in the meeting made it sound like Mr. Clark and King George had awarded us a grant to improve our parking when that was not the case. It was the community foundation, and it wasn't real clear. I wasn't clear about the improvements we're working on with both the Department of Transportation and King George County about improved safety along 218 between Caledon Park and the trail crossing at Route 218. So I have added those in the added the modified comment in the chat box. Over and out.
All right, are there any other amendments to the minutes?
Mr. Chair, this is Jacob from Spotsylvania County.
Yes, go ahead, Jacob.
Hey, thank you. I just have a minor thing. It's a request for clarification regarding the minutes on page 5, specifically as it results to my reference of Spotsylvania County and DPAC concerning a Virginia Land Conservation Fund application and recreational easement. I think ultimately what I was trying to get at that point, this had to do with a National Park Service consideration for collaboration on an all-inclusive 8,000-mile connector network. I think what I was ultimately trying to get at is to request that National Park Service consider the Spotsylvania County Trailways Master Plan, specifically the Nye River Trail Corridor and how it relates and/or can connect to the National Park Service trail system, dealing with Lee Drive. I'm sorry, not Lee Drive, Jackson Trail East. I was just looking for some collaboration on that. We literally have a recreational trail easement that connects to Jackson Trail East, and I think we're just looking for some collaborative planning on that effort. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Any other comments on the minutes?
This is Kirsten.
Go ahead, Kirsten.
Probably not for the minutes, but Jacob, sorry, I totally missed that point last time. So I don't know how to respond to let you know that I am interested in working with you. So I'll just say it out loud. It doesn't need to be reflected in the notes, but you, me, man, we're on it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right. Any more comments on the minutes? All right. Hearing none, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jim Lynch. I move that the minutes be approved as corrected.
This is Lee Anderson. I will second that.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor of Mr. Huey's motion? I'm sorry, Mr. Lynch's motion?
Aye.
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 All opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, at this portion of the meeting, we will open the floor for public comment. This is for anyone who is not a member of the committee. This is the only time during the meeting that we will accept citizen comment, public comment. So is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment at this time? Second call for members of the public making comment. All right, hearing none, I will close the floor for public comment.
Mr. Pennington, I will go ahead and read the email that was received by FAMPO.
Okay, thank you.
This was an email sent to FAMPO by City of Fredericksburg resident Miss Elizabeth Ledoux. Good evening. I saw a Facebook post asking for thoughts on biking and walking trails in Fredericksburg. The federal Safe Routes to Schools program has federal money for building walking and biking trails to schools. I propose we use funds like these to build a bike trail that runs from Learning Lane, running north along Route 1 all the way to James Monroe High School, connecting all of our schools to the same new path and connecting to the VCR trail and the canal path, giving a huge percentage of our school-age children access to a path route to every school in our district. Also, the large number of people walking along Route 1 would have a safe path to get to their destination, which I'm guessing is to shopping. Next, we can address a safe path along Lafayette Boulevard for the same purpose. Thanks for your consideration. End quote.
All right, thank you. Any more comments from the public virtually? All right, with that, I will close public comment and we'll move on to agenda item 6. And I will turn the floor over to Mrs. Barber for review of the January 25th, 2021 Policy Committee meeting.
Good evening, everyone. So our administrator, Ian Ollis, is with us. So I will turn item 6A over to him.
Thank you very much. I just want to share my screen, but it doesn't seem to be. Can you all see my screen or not?
No, sir.
Sorry?
No, sir, we can't.
Adam, could you assist by, it seems as though I don't have permission to share my screen with the group.
Yeah, this is Adam. You have permission now. You should be able to. If you can't, I can share it for you.
I'm clicking share and it still doesn't seem to be working. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the entire presentation, but
it's
Adam,
up there.
Yeah, I think that's Adam's screen and not mine, is it?
Oh. The red, blue, green, yellow thing?
Yeah.
Ian, this is mine.
Yeah, that is yours. Sure. Okay. I'm going to go through these slides quite quickly. I did make the full presentation at the FAMPO Policy Committee. Some of you may have seen that. The document has also been available to you already, so I don't need to do it again. But I will just make some comments on a couple of slides. So Adam, if you could just go through to that first COVID slide. So this looks at the COVID impacts on transportation in our region. And this particular graph shows you the graph of the traffic during the last several months of COVID in the last year. And you can see the red line indicates the trucks and freight on roads in the state. It's a statewide graph, and you can see that the zero line is what the traffic was 1 year ago. So COVID has actually not reduced the amount of freight traffic on our roads and highways. We've actually seen an increase of the freight traffic during this period, but you've seen a decrease in the cars on the roads and highways, around 10%, sometimes as much as 20%. Next slide. Adam. Okay, so this slide, you can look at it at home in much detail, but basically it's showing that on the weekends, traffic is still high. There is a drop during COVID on the midweek peak period traffic, but the daily totals still seem to be quite high for all traffic in the state. You can see the big drop when COVID hit around March, April, and it's slowly gone back up to almost where it was, except, as I say, midweek traffic is a little bit down. Next slide. So this looks at a national picture of bus ridership. So we picked a bunch of bus systems, and you can see what happened when COVID hit. It dropped, but it's slowly but surely rising again. Next slide. The rail picture, however, is more disastrous. You can see these are commuter rail systems. COVID hit, and the rail systems are really battling to get the ridership back on those systems. Next slide. In our local area, the green line is the VRE train system ridership. The red line is the Fred bus system, and the blue is the OmniRide commuter bus system. And you can see that the biggest impact again is the trains. They're just not getting people back to the trains. But the bus ridership is already up to about 50% of the pre-COVID level. So the buses on Fred are doing better, and OmniRide is doing even better than Fred in terms of rebounding after COVID. And we're still in a fairly serious situation in terms of the virus, but the bus ridership is rebounding in spite of that. Next slide. Next one. So this slide just shows you the concentration of people living, the density of people living in our area. The darker the color, the more people per square mile are living in the area. So you can see in the center, that red and brown, that's the city of Fredericksburg. And in the north, you can see Stafford County. The central areas of Stafford County up north have got quite a high density of population. Adam, can you move now down a couple of slides to the slide with the red circles? This one, yes. If you look at this slide, the point of this slide in those red circles is just to show where there is a higher concentration of people living that is quite far from the north-south transportation routes. The black north-south line is the I-95. The slightly less dark north-south line next to that is the Route 1 highway. And then you can see the jagged line to the right of that is the VRE train system. So you can see where those main north-south corridors are. The areas in red are quite far out from those north-south corridors, which means that we have to find ways of transporting people from those areas to the main north-south corridor, because between 40 and 60% of our population works north of us in DC or Northern Virginia, and they have to move there to go to work. Next slide. This slide just shows you the shaded area is where preferably we'd like the new density to be built. New housing developments, new work opportunities, and venues for companies to operate ideally would be situated in that shaded area, because they have direct access either to the I-95 or Route 1 or the VRE rail system, which means that you can transport people and goods quickly from those shaded areas because they're closer to the main transportation routes. Next. So the question we just ask out of these maps is, how do we bring land use and transportation together? And how do the various counties and the city of Fredericksburg deal with land use? Where to build new housing, where to build new factories, new office blocks, and so on, new retail outlets. That's not something that FAMPO does, but it is something that we need to be aware of, because those counties and city will look to FAMPO for the funding and the federal authorities for the funding to build roads. So we need to try and optimize the use of those funds when we build new roads by trying to encourage densification where we already have transportation systems, because it's a lot less expensive for us to maintain those systems than to build new roads, new bus routes further out into what is currently more rural areas. Next. Rail. I'm not going to read this in detail, but basically we're going to see a lot more new trains coming through our region, both Amtrak trains in 2026 and again in 2030. They're going to add additional trips per day, and also the VRE trains. We're going to add 2 new ones in 2026 per day, and another 2 new additional ones in 2030 per day. That's 4 new VRE trains per day. And by 2030, we'll see basically almost an hourly service of trains running through our region. Next slide. The other big rail thing to be aware of is that there's a study currently going on to look at the extension, the possible extension of the Metro DC Blue Line towards the FAMPO region. They're looking at the moment at the possibility of building down to Quantico, and that will make it easier for people from our region to get into DC if they do work in DC. But at this stage, it's only a study, and they're currently seeking public comment on the proposals. Next. Bus transit the ridership has been declining. A new leadership team is now at Fredbus, and we look forward to them bringing out new policies and plans to improve the service of the Fredbus. But if we just look at the next slide, you will see that the ridership in red of the Fredbus compared with the national average, you'll see that Fred did very well in 2011, 2012, 2013 against the national average, but they've been doing quite badly in the years since then. And we're hoping that the new leadership team at Fred will turn that around. And I'm hearing already some new proposals. We attended their board meeting this week, and there are some proposals to start the Fred bus from 7 a.m. in the morning instead of from 8 a.m. when some people are already at work. So things like that will certainly improve the ridership on the Fred bus. Next. That does represent, however, before the current period, a 46% drop in the ridership before COVID hit, which is quite significant. Next. We can skip this slide. Next one. The way forward for FAMPO. Here's a list of suggested study projects that we should look at. We've already submitted an application to do an east-west mobility study because so many investments are going into the north-south routes. The I-95, Route 1, and the VRE train system, but not as much effort is going into the east-west movement of people and goods. And so we want to do that study. Fred is conducting a study on their ridership and how to turn that around as part of their strategic plan. And we also think that we want to do a new scenario planning effort for our LRTP. We want to look at a future mobility and accessibility survey to find out why people take their car instead of taking the train or taking the Fred bus or taking OmniRide and so on, and what they think about all the transportation options that we have available. And we also need to, in my view, do a freight movement study because we are seeing so much freight on the highways and it's growing. Next. Rail abandonment. There is a policy that when you abandon a railroad in Virginia, like in the rest of the United States, that you should try to preserve the right-of-way for future use. And rail banking began in Virginia in 1983. Next slide. So we have one particular rail line that was abandoned, which has not in its complete extent been rail banked properly, and that is the historic Virginia Central Railway right-of-way, which goes from downtown Fredericksburg through Spotsylvania County out to Orange County, and only portions of it were preserved, even though it was that the last section of that was only abandoned in 1984 after rail banking was begun in the state. Next slide. If we look in detail at that, some of you have cycled the bike paths that are now part of that rail right-of-way. The legend there will just show you what is going on in terms of the current status. We've got the purple sections are currently privately owned or in private hands. The yellow is county-owned land. And the white is where we have the trails. So you can see that if we want to try to reuse bigger portions of the VCR, that purple section in the middle is a stumbling block currently. It's not land that is owned by one of the counties or the city, and it's private land, which means that accessing it is problematic. Next slide. The question is, what could we have done with this VCR right of way if it had been properly rail banked? In Maryland, they're coming out with the purple line soon. Those are the first train sets to roll out of the production line, and they're building a purple line using an old right of way. Perhaps we could have done that on the VCR, or we could have run a rapid bus system with a dedicated right of way instead of in mixed traffic, or we could have created a full bike and scooter to work trail that goes the full length of that. We could have done quite a few things with that. Next slide. So could we salvage more of it? I don't know. I certainly hope so. Perhaps Spotsylvania, Fredericksburg, and Fampo could together explore improving how much of that we could get access to and utilize in better ways in the future. And I certainly think that's something we should explore further, working together as a team. If we aren't able to save more of that route, the other options are to add more lanes to something like Route 3 and other roads for more bus service and more cars instead, which is a pity. Next. Skip this one. And skip this one. Okay, the current staff of FAMPO, when I arrived on the 1st of November, the block on the left was the kind of staff makeup that we had. A lot of part-time interns, a lot of part-time transportation planners, and administrative staff. We didn't have a lot of full-time planners doing planning work. I'm trying progressively to change that picture. So as of the 1st of January, I've added another full-time staff planner, which is the person of Matthew Lahane, who was part-time previously. And we have not renewed the contracts of the interns, so we now only have one part-time staff member, and the rest are currently full-time. Next slide. We've also embarked on a plan of specialization with the staff at the office, and that just gives you some idea of what we're doing. We're asking staff to become subject matter experts in particular areas of expertise and encourage them to do additional courses, learning, reaching out to colleagues in other institutions to find out what other people are doing so that we can learn and grow the experience of our current staff. And I think we're doing quite well at that. So I think it's an exciting new era for us as a team. And I'll take any questions. Thank you for listening to this kind of shortened version of my presentation.
Hey, Ian, this is Brian Googe of Stafford County. Thanks for the presentation. It was really informative. The part about the vehicle trips being as high as they are in the current situation was particularly striking to me. And I'm wondering, how impactful it's going to be when people really start going back to work on a regular basis. But back on the slide where you had some recommendations about future residential growth. I was curious, you mentioned proximity as one of the factors that went into that. Were there any other factors? Like I noticed not really much recommended to the west of 95. Was that mainly just due to the existing residential density and some of the traffic concerns that are already in that area?
Yes, so the situation is, if you, before COVID, were driving to work in the morning from areas that were further to the west, or alternatively areas that were further to the east, you would have experienced the morning peak traffic trying to get somewhere. And the more we build out west and the more we build out east, the more that congestion is going to increase, and the road system there will ultimately not be able to handle it. So the trade-off is, do you build more housing and then look for money to build wider roads and more roads, or do you try and build the housing and the business premises where there's already a lot of capacity or closer to the major transportation routes to job opportunities? So it's a trade-off. I mean, either way, you've got to do something. Do you move the housing or do you move the roads? I mean, that's sort of an oversimplification of the problem, but do you understand the basic principle is that if we build more further out west and further out east, we then have to also find money to widen the roads that, like Route 3, that goes out east, because it's going to have to take more traffic. And if we don't do that, it's going to be bumper to bumper, slow moving traffic in the future. So the reason for a slide like this is to say, let's think about where we put the new growth, because if we just allow it to happen on demand by, say, developers or whoever, we then are going to create traffic problems for ourselves, and we may not be able to fund as many roads as we really want to service those developing areas. So it's a question of just using a slide to bring to mind that there's a trade-off. The trade-off is, between building sort of more haphazardly or in a more structured way, versus building new roads or just maintaining existing roads and the rail system. We don't have a rail system that goes east to west. We only have a rail system that goes north to south currently. We need to bear that in mind when we are encouraging the changes of zoning ordinances, for example, in our communities.
Hey, Ian, this is Adam from Friends of the Rappahannock. Thank you for the presentation. It seems like you've learned a lot since you came to FAMPO. So one sort of a comment, I know that Stafford County has been really working hard to push through an ordinance affecting their agricultural zone, designed to discourage more of that sprawl style development, especially out to the west. And Friends of the Rappahannock is supporting that. Just wanted to put that on your plate. I figured you probably had some understanding of it. I did have a question about Fred. So as part of their sort of re-looking at Fred right now with new leadership, are they considering maybe demoing a more rapid transit style bus? Right now Fred basically runs one loop an hour, so it's a kind of a slow moving organism that seems to me to be doing a good job of covering a large area, but maybe not moving people at the pace and frequency that maybe they would like. Has that been a part of the discussion?
So to the 2 points, the one is I welcome the thought going in Stafford to locating development appropriately, but I just must put the caveat that I'm not against development. I do believe we need to grow. We have too many people moving to the area, and if we don't make spaces for them to build housing, that's going to push up the price of existing housing to ridiculous levels. So I think that we should build new housing. I just think we must think about where we build it, not try to prevent it being built, because that will just not help. On the Fred bus system, I mean, I don't want to prematurely speak on behalf of Fred. I have made the suggestions to them that you've just spoken about in terms of increasing the frequency of their buses, and I know that they are really keen to do that. The question is, of course, that means additional drivers and additional salaries and that kind of thing. So it's a cost-benefit analysis for them. I know they're very keen to do what you've suggested. They are well aware that the frequency of the buses is not high enough to grow the ridership. But they've got to do that cost-benefit analysis, or alternatively, they've got to come to Stafford and Spotsylvania and Fredericksburg and say, hey, we need more cash. We'd like to have a 20-minute headway, a bus every 20 minutes. But to do that, we need to employ 10 more drivers, and their salaries are X amount. So it's a trade-off, and I know that they're trying to make those numbers work so that they can provide more frequent service. One of the things I personally suggested was to pick one or maybe two routes and make those frequent through the densest parts of our region as a test case to show what can be done. Now, we'd have to see which of those ideas they take on board and which ones they come up with. They've got ideas of their own, which may be better than those. I don't know, but certainly we've been, as the FAMPO staff, chatting to Fred, offering our support, offering our encouragement, and also our research team. If they need any assistance, we'll gladly help to improve the situation where we can.
Thank you. Is there going to be an opportunity for public comment on that Fred revisioning anytime soon?
So I know that they're preparing presentations to the board. I forget the name of the board, just forgive me. I'm still new to some of the organizations that work in our region, but there is some public input into that process. So if you chat to Carrie, who's our staff member that takes care of this committee, she'll be able to put you in touch with the process of how you make inputs into what Fred is planning. But they haven't tabled the full plans yet. They've just started talking at this month's board meeting about, for example, starting the bus at 7 a.m., which I think is a fantastic idea, because if you start the bus at 8 a.m., which it's been for years, many people are at work already by 8 a.m. They will need a bus to get to work by 8 a.m. And if the bus only starts the route at 8 a.m., it's too late. So they're going in the right direction. I encourage you to reach out to Carrie about kind of how exactly the public comments on their proposals.
Great. Thank you so much. Great presentation.
Thanks.
If I may interject for a moment, please. Is it okay to speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm a little new here. This is my first time doing this, and I wanted to say thank you to everyone for allowing me to be on board here. My name's Yamina, and I do have a question about the Fred bus. In terms of stops, I as a citizen who's rode the bus before, and has had to walk to bus stops that Fred bus picks up at, I can honestly say that I don't believe there are enough stops to pick people up, and this is an extremely heavily dense residential neighborhood. So maybe adding more stops might be helpful. And you're right about the hours. I believe someone who's taken Fred bus multiple times that it really would help to have better work hours that are pertinent to people's 9 to 5 schedules or 6 to 4 schedules, 6 to 5 schedules. So what are your thoughts on having more stops for the Fred bus?
Mr. Chair, I don't want to become a spokesperson for Fred, so I'll just make a very brief comment. It's again a trade-off. So if you want more stops, you slow the bus down, because it's going to take that much longer for the bus to get to its destination, because the time that the bus takes to slow down, to stop, to then load up people, to have them, pay their ticket, to get seats on the bus, for the bus to speed up again, could take, I don't know, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It depends. Depends how many people, depends how long the bus stops for. And you add that to the journey time. And every time you add a single stop, you're adding another 3 minutes to the journey time, or 5 minutes, however long it is. Now, the people who are on the bus, if you add 3 stops, you could be adding 10 to 15 minutes to their journey time, and they're not going to like you for it. So the question is the trade-off. How many can you add versus how quickly do people want to get to where they're going? It's a trade-off. Part of the solution is to have more than one route in the area. So if you can add multiple routes, they don't all stop at every spot, and then you deal with that problem. But again, that's a trade-off of how much funding do we have versus how many buses can we run simultaneously. There's no perfect solution. It's a combination of maybe we can add another stop or change the route system so that it's serves all communities that have enough people, enough density to warrant a bus coming to their area. It's complex. It's on the ground. It seems like a simple solution, but when you put it into the calculation of how many drivers you need, how many buses you need, and how long each trip is going to take, it becomes just quite a complicated calculation. And what definitely helps is having more frequent buses, because that reduces the time of your total journey, because your waiting time for the next bus is less.
Okay, thank you.
Stan Hewitt, quick question, or a couple quick questions here. One, what percentage of our stops have bicycle and pedestrian shelters and bike stands, so that if someone commutes to the stop, that they have a place to be sheltered from the weather, and also if they're riding a bike, a place to lock a bike up, while they're gone. I would think that would help ridership. And along with that, have we looked at how friendly that stop is to the person who's walking or biking to that location? Is there a path or a walkable sidewalk, a road edge that they could use? I just wondered if that kind of coordination has been thought into that. And then I have one other after this.
So, I mean, if you look at the picture that Adam is showing now, I sent a staff member out to photograph bus stops for the Fred system. And those are 4 bus stops. And you'll see I wrote there on the slide, spot the bus stop. Can you see where the bus stop is? Each one has got a sign. Each one has a sign up. The sign is in black and white, and against the dark skyline, it's very difficult to see where the bus stop is. They do have sidewalks in those particular areas, but the bus stop is just a black and white sign fixed to a pole or a whatever. And so there are no shelters in many of them, and it's not easy to identify them because the signage is just plain black and white. So I don't know the answer to the question how many do have shelters and how many do have signage and how many do have sidewalks. So I can't answer that question, but I certainly know that more could be done.
Yeah, that was sort of where I was going with my question, is maybe some coordination with the counties and the city to looking at how easily we can identify those stops, have shelter for people if they're standing in the weather, and also a place to lock up a bicycle. You can travel a lot farther, a lot faster if you ride a bike to it, but then you want a place to put that bike while you're gone for the day.
Agreed.
The other question was on the VCR trail. I noticed there was a fairly large section of the trail up north. Is that bike ped friendly? Is there a rail trail or some sort of bike ped route on that?
So Carrie is actually the expert on this. Maybe she wants to comment, but the white sections are where we have trails currently.
Correct. Stan, what section are you referring to?
Okay, the white has a trail. Okay, I guess the yellow is the only one. I thought the yellow was where we had a trail.
No, those are county-owned parcels that theoretically could.
Oh,
be
okay,
used for the
okay,
trail.
okay.
Yeah, that big white section there is the VCR trail in Fredericksburg.
Yeah,
That's our
I'm familiar with that. What I was wondering, we've been looking at that for a while in Spotsylvania as far as, how do we run that farther out? And the big challenge is, of course, getting over 95 and connecting to the current Fredericksburg Trail. And once we can get that done, I think there would be a lot more political push for completing it and moving it farther out, and getting rail edges or dedicated trails or that sort of thing to complete that process. I had them mixed up. I was thinking this white section up here up in Northern Virginia, that is a dedicated trail, so that would be okay. That's good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. It was a very nice presentation. Carrie, do you need to finish up part 6?
So for part 6B, our public involvement coordinator, Stacy Feint, is with us, so she can handle that one.
Can you guys hear me? No. Yes. Are you guys able to hear me? Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'm having terrible audio tonight. Okay, so there's no action required by this committee on this issue. This is just for your information. What this is a notice that FAMPO has opened up a public comment period and is announcing a public hearing on an amendment that we are proposing to our staff work program, which is known as the Unified Planning Work Program. And in that document, we list all the tasks that staff anticipates to complete in the fiscal year. And we also align what funding sources we will use. So we need to add a work product which relates to a new staff hire. We need to do some work with regards to visa applications there. And VDOT has told us that we need to add that specific language to our work plan before we can conduct that. So again, this is just for your knowledge. There's some links there that you can read the exact language of the proposed amendment, information on how you can submit a comment should you have one, and also that the public hearing will be held at the policy committee meeting on February 22nd. I'm happy to answer any questions, but this is just kind of a routine and simple matter.
All right. Thank you, Stacy. And Carrie, do you have part 6C?
Part 6D, yes. So this is just an update that the policy committee was informed at its January 25th meeting that BPAC had 2 vacancies for its at-large representatives. And as you saw during roll call, it worked very quickly to begin filling them. And that's all that was.
All right. Thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 7, action items. And the first one is to approve the addition of the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission membership to BPAC. PRTC has requested to be a member, and so I'll open the floor for any discussion on that item. Hearing none, I'll accept the motion. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the addition of PRTC to BPAC.
Lee Anderson, I will second the motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. And I would like to welcome Joy Himes to the BPAC committee as the representative from PRTC.
Hi, everybody.
All right, and so we'll move forward now to part 7C, which is the East Coast Greenway guest presentation. I'm sorry about that. East Coast Greenway guest presentation with Ms. Sarah Sanford.
Hi, thanks, Craig. Can you hear me and see me okay? Okay, great. Okay, hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Sanford, and I'm with the East Coast Greenway Alliance. I have been asked to give a brief presentation tonight about the East Coast Greenway in general, and also how it plays into the Greenway feasibility study. So I'll try to keep it fairly brief. I'm gonna set a timer now so I don't talk too long. Anyway, I know several of you, but to those I don't know, hello. Again, I'm the Virginia and North Carolina coordinator for the East Coast Greenway Alliance. So I actually am located at the Alliance's headquarters in Durham, North Carolina, but I'm from Fredericksburg. I grew up in South Stafford, went to Stafford High School, so I know the area. So if you have any local questions, I will know what you're talking about. So we will go ahead and get started. So if you go to the next slide, please. So for those who don't know, the East Coast Greenway is a 3,000-mile walking and biking route that stretches from Maine to Florida, and of course goes right through the middle of Virginia. Next slide. And our mission is connecting the population centers along the East Coast. So both the capitals, the urban areas, the rural areas, and the suburban areas in between. Next slide. So as of last year, at the end of 2020, our route is about 1/3 complete. So out of those 3,000 miles that I mentioned, a little over 1,000 miles are complete. And so by complete, I mean protected off-road greenway. The remainder of our route is still what we call on-road. So that's our interim travel route, while the rest of the greenway is being built. And as you can imagine, building a 3,000-mile greenway is a very long-term project. So this is something that is accomplished over the course of decades and not so much just several years. Next slide. And some of this I know will be preaching to the choir here, but the East Coast Greenway is of course a trail, but it's more than a trail. It's also an amazing public health resource. I think everyone has probably seen during the COVID pandemic, as we talked about earlier, the increased use on trails has been huge as people can't get to the gym. So they're using the trails for both physical health and mental health. It's also about access to nature and the outdoors, outdoor recreation. And of course, trails are huge for economic development and tourism as well. Next slide. So just wrapping up the big picture here, the Greenway by the numbers, again, is 3,000 miles long, passed through 15 states and Washington, D.C. There's about 450 communities along the route and about 25 million people within 5 miles of the route. So another part of our mission is getting those people who live near the Greenway but don't use it or don't know about it to get on the Greenway and use it. Next slide. So a big question we get is how does the Greenway happen? As I mentioned, it's a very long-term project, but essentially it's all about linking local trails together into one long continuous route. So it's made up of lots and lots of small trails that are often half mile, 1 mile, 5 miles long, fairly short. And of course, as new trails come online, those are closing the gaps. And I think it is important to mention that the East Coast Greenway Alliance, as a nonprofit organization, we don't own or maintain the local trail segments. Those are, of course, owned and maintained under the jurisdiction of the localities along the route. So our job is essentially to be the facilitator of helping localities get pieces of the Greenway built and then connecting them all together into this one long distance route. Next slide. So permanent route criteria. How do local greenways become designated as an official part of the East Coast Greenway? So you'll see that this is a fairly general overview. I'll note that at the bottom there's a link to our official East Coast Greenway design guide. So that's going to have all the technical details and specifications. But in general, to become a permanent part of the Greenway, the trail has to be traffic separated. It has to be public and accessible, so anyone can use it at any time of day, no matter whether that's walking, biking, using a wheelchair, etc. Avoiding steep grades, of course, wide enough for shared use. So again, that goes back to our whole mission as a multi-use trail for all different types of non-motorized use. Firm surface and safe for all. So I don't want to spend too much time on that one, but that just gives you an idea of what can become a permanent part of the Greenway. And again, our design guide has all the specifications for that. Next slide. So of course, wanted to spend a little bit of time looking at maps. I know anyone involved in BPAC probably enjoys maps. So this is just a big picture map of our route through Virginia. So Virginia is a special part of the Greenway because it has both a spine route and what we call a complementary route. So the spine route passes through the middle of the state. You can see it in green there. And the complementary route is in gray. So that follows the Virginia Capitol Trail out of Richmond over towards Williamsburg and Jamestown, and then goes through Hampton Roads. So the spine route, the solid green line shows the completed part of the route. So again, that's actual off-road protected greenway. And then the dotted green lines are the parts of our route that are on-road, what I mentioned before as interim on-road. So that one's our route through Virginia, and I wanted to zoom into the FAMPO region. So if you go to the next slide. So this is our current travel route, again, the interim travel route through the FAMPO area. So the blue, you can see that thick blue line there is our on-road parts, and then green represents actual trail. I will note that this map in particular the route is a little bit different right now because of the Chatham Bridge being closed and under construction. So typically we would go over the Chatham Bridge, but with the construction closure, I created a little detour around that. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But I just wanted to give an overview of what the current travel route looks like right now in the area. I will add that I've worked with a lot of different folks in the FAMPO area on adjusting our route over time. So for example, the city of Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania County and Caroline County worked with me last year on doing some changes to the route to make it better aligned with the local bike ped plans. And right now I'm in the process of working with some Stafford County folks on making some updates there. So the Stafford County updates aren't quite reflected here, but that's just something we do over time is making changes to our route as the local bike ped plans change, as transportation priorities change. So we try to stay up to date with that as much as possible. Next slide, please. And so this one's a little more complicated. This is our envisioned route. So essentially this is what are the plans 5-10 years down the road for the East Coast Greenway. The legend here, I know it looks a little complicated. That's mainly because this is an internal map for us where we kind of keep track of the different stages of development for the trail. So it's okay if this one doesn't make a lot of sense. Again, this is not something we typically share with the public. And I will also note that this envisioned route map is a little out of date. It still reflects some of the old routing that I haven't updated yet. So take some of this with a grain of salt. The idea here is just to show what do we think the route's going to look like 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And this helps us keep track of the different stages of development. Next slide. And then this is zooming into the city of Fredericksburg and the southern part of Stafford County. This is our current travel route through that area. So you can see where the two red dots are Of course, that's the Chatham Bridge where it's closed to construction. So we just created a reroute going through Pratt Park and then going over the Falmouth Bridge to get back into Fredericksburg. So of course, when the Chatham Bridge reopens and when the bike ped connection is complete, we can route over there, but this is the detour for the time being. Next slide, thank you. So wanted to put in a quick plug for our mapping tool, which is available for the public, map.greenway.org. So again, this is for the public, for anyone, whether or not you're map savvy. This is a tool you can use to check out our route for the entirety of the East Coast Greenway. And it's also a trip planning tool. So whether it's a day trip or a longer distance trip, you can plug in a start point and an end point. So say you wanted to go from Fredericksburg to DC, you could plug in those 2 points and it would print out a cue sheet for you with details on your mileage and your elevation change and all of that. So that's a tool for recreational purposes, but also for looking at the actual details of the route. So that's map.greenway.org. Next slide. So shifting gears a little bit here, I have been asked to talk a bit about the Greenway feasibility study that FAMPO got the grant for. And again, congratulations on getting that grant. I know that we were really excited to help with a letter of support for that. So I've been asked to give a few tips on conducting a Greenway feasibility study, and these are just some resources I've compiled together from the Alliance's experience being part of Greenway feasibility studies. We do a lot of these all up and down the East Coast. So these are some quick tips, but I also have plenty of resources that I can pass on via email that are actual other feasibility studies. So I'll go through these briefly, but again, keep in mind I can pass on a lot more over email or talk over the phone. So probably the biggest thing that we've learned from working on feasibility studies is the most important thing you can do to save time is not reinvent the wheel. So using the structure of other feasibility studies as a model, we have plenty of feasibility studies that have been done along the East Coast Greenway, whether it's local, regional, or even larger scale that I can pass on to you. And nothing wrong with copying the structure of those, and it saves a lot of time. And of course, the second point here, a big part of that is outlining the objectives beforehand and then structuring the report accordingly. So figuring out what is it that you want out of the feasibility study and having the chapters of your study reflect those outcomes and those deliverables. The third one, the different stakeholders involved. I won't spend too much time on this one because I think everyone who's involved already knows this, but of course you need a diverse array of stakeholders. So folks who are the local bike ped planners, folks who are community members, folks who know about land acquisition, that's a huge part. And then having the support of elected officials and both public sector, other government folks, but also the private sector, the consultants, et cetera, and having as many different types of strengths on the team as possible. The next point here is the three Greenway principles that we use, at least in Greenway planning, which are safety, connectivity, and accessibility. So connectivity is a big one in terms of greenways. What we always think about it as is people need to be connected to where they need to go. So people's homes have to connect to where they need to go, whether it's the school, grocery store, work, etc. And then accessibility. Is it accessible for all different types of people, all different types of uses? So whether they are walking or biking or using a mobility device, etc. And then, of course, safety. Is it something that someone of all different ability types can use? The second to last point here is three main things to identify in any feasibility study. One of which, engineering challenges. So when we say engineering challenges, we mean water crossings, for example, wetlands. Is this an area where a boardwalk would have to be elevated above a wetland? Engineering challenges is another way of saying it's going to be expensive. So definitely identify those. And then, of course, right-of-way challenges, private land versus public ownership. Where can land be acquired? Where can it not? And this one, I think, is preaching to the choir for any planners, but alternative routes. As you're conducting the feasibility study, it's rare that your first choice for the routing for a trail is going to work out. So having those alternative routes within the feasibility study identified beforehand. And the last point here, which I think is probably the most important one for any feasibility study, is creativity and flexibility in routing. So we all know money doesn't grow on trees, and it's often very expensive to build a greenway, especially if it's a paved greenway. So in areas where a brand new shared use path is not possible, is it possible to widen an existing sidewalk so that it is available for shared use of both bike and ped? And then, of course, following existing corridors, whether it's a utility corridor, a canal, riverbank, which there are many of in this area, using those areas that already exist to cut down on costs is a big part. So I know that's a lot, but like I said, I can email plenty of examples of other feasibility studies just like this one that have been done in different areas up and down the East Coast that I think would actually be really helpful to use as a structure. So I'll make sure to send those on too. I think I just have one last slide in here before I wrap up. Yeah, so just touching on the role that the East Coast Greenway can play in this feasibility study. We are, of course, a national trail. We go from Maine to Florida. And so it provides that regional and statewide connectivity. And obviously, we have a north-south alignment. And so that's something that can be used in mapping out in the feasibility study. And it can be used to also help identify gaps of where does trail exist? Where is there a higher need for other shared use paths and connectivity? And then last but not least, we are certainly available to be a part of future grant applications for both planning grants and construction funding. So for example, I think we did a letter of support for this feasibility study for the grant that's funding this one, but we can also provide technical assistance when it comes to mapping, GIS, all that kind of stuff. We can certainly help out and play a role with all of that. So I think I'm right at 15 minutes here, so I'm going to end it there. And if we have time for questions and discussion, I'm happy to do it. I don't know if you all need to keep rolling with the agenda, but happy to answer questions if there's time.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Are there any questions or discussion for this item?
Hey, Sarah, this is Jacob.
Hey, Jacob. Yeah, Jacob, I forgot you wanted to add some things. Please do.
Oh, no problem at all. I just want to, thank you for your assistance as part of our regional redesign of the route. I did recently speak with Eric Nelson from the city of Fredericksburg, and I think we're both on the same page that we have a fairly confident connection where we revised the route at Tidewater Trail. I did kind of notify you that Caroline County and ourselves and Spotsy are still kind of moving around, trying to look at the best opportunities, areas where road widening projects or developments are probably most feasible to see action. So we may be coming back at you with another route revision to the Caroline County connection. I am trying to proactively update our thoroughfare plan right now with our comprehensive plan update to identify the improvements so they're there, and whether or not we have the East Coast Greenway designation in time of our comprehensive plan update, we'll at least have confidence that we're going after those improvements that can complement it when the time comes for the East Coast Greenway Alliance to support any route revisions. So I just wanted to let you know that, and also thank you for your assistance providing letters of support. If you hang out a little bit, this is probably not the right time to say this, but we do have some good news at the city line with the East Coast Greenway with a smart scale application that's recently been identified as a committed project for our county. So we have good news at that county border, and we just changed that alignment. So that's good news. Thank you.
Thanks for that update, Jacob. Yeah, excited to see the smart scale news. So that's great to hear. And I'm sure it looks like that's next on the agenda. So I will stick around to hear more about that.
All right, any other questions or comments on the presentation?
Yes, I'd. Um, as as the representative of the Potomac Heritage Trail Association, and we've been actively looking for a long time of a way to get through get an off-road route through Stafford County, where we can begin to connect up with routes going east through the northern neck. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for the East Coast Greenway and the Potomac Heritage Trail communities to collaborate and partner, leaning on each other to identify and work toward and support the route that you've identified as an alternative route through Stafford County. I don't think we need to particularly discuss it right here, but I would be very interested in meeting with you at a later time to initiate a discussion along those lines, if you're up for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please do send me an email. My email's on the screen there. And I'll say that I do work with some of the Potomac Heritage Trail folks already, more so up in Prince William County. I work with them.
Yes.
Our route is partially aligned, so the East Coast Greenway and the Potomac Heritage Trail meet up in several points and follow the same route. In other parts, we don't. The Potomac Heritage Trail is a little bit more wilderness oriented than we are, but there are several areas where we align and definitely could work together. So yeah, please do send me an email.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. Any other questions, comments for Sarah? All right, thank you, Sarah. Jacob and I will be in touch.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yep. All right, so now we'll move on to item 7B, update on the system for the allocation and management of resources transportation smart scale round 4, Ms. Carrie Barber.
Thank you. Okay, Adam, go ahead and move forward on that slide. All right, so smart scale has 6 scoring factors, just as a sort of introduction for those of you not familiar with it. Safety, congestion, accessibility, economic development, environmental quality, and land use. And those factors have different weights depending on what category you're in the state. Next slide, please. You can see here how they're weighted. Category A, which is the category we were in up until this round, is heavily weighted in congestion, 45%, so almost half of it. We have moved from category A to category B, which is a little more balanced between the categories, and that seems to have benefited us. We did very well as a region in this last round. Next slide. You can see here are the different regions and the categories that they fall in. When we were in category A, we were competing with Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads, so kind of tough there. And now we are in category B, so we have smaller communities that we're competing with. Next slide. All right, so the recommended projects with a bike ped component that the CTB chose for funding on February 14th, so this just recently happened. And this is these are subject to change, but this is what the Commonwealth Transportation Board has recommended for funding. There are 9 projects here: Route 208, operational and multimodal improvements; Route 1 Stars, Augustine Avenue intersection; Town of Bowling Green. Oh, and let me clarify, these are not just regional projects, but they're also locality projects. So Town of Bowling Green, Lafayette Boulevard, multimodal, Route 2 and 17 widening, US 17 business, Idlewild Boulevard, Route 1 and Lay Hill Road, and Route 1 208 multimodal. You can see here the organization that sponsored the project, whether FAMPO, GWRC, or a locality. The total project cost, now that's the total cost, not just the bike ped component. The smart scale request, and the final score that they received. Next slide. So I'm just going to be talking about the bike ped part of these projects. So for the first one, Route 208 operational and multimodal improvements, the bike ped portion will consist of improvements to the Route 208 park and ride lot. We were talking earlier about bus shelters and how some of them could really use some improvement. This one is going to get some. They're going to get a better transit shelter with LED solar lighting, 10 bicycle lockers and covered bicycle parking spots, and new signage. So that'll be nice. Next slide. The US Route 1 Stars and Augustine Avenue intersection, that's in Fredericksburg by the college. The pedestrian component for this project is a section of sidewalk, and they're going to relocate the pedestrian ramps across the westbound approach of Eagle Village Drive and College Avenue to make it safer for pedestrians. Next slide. This one is a Caroline County project, the town of Bowling Green. The bike ped component of this project consists of crossing improvements at 8 intersections throughout the town, new sidewalks, that's the blue lines on the map there, and pavement markings on 3 streets. Those will be share the road markings on those low traffic, low speed streets. Next slide. Lafayette multimodal improvements. For this one, the project consists of 2,000 feet of sidewalk on the east side of Lafayette Boulevard from Sheetz to the Family Dollar. So that's a long section of sidewalk that actually will connect several bus stops. Next slide. So Route 2 and Route 17 widening from City Line to the Shannon Airport. That's the one that Jacob and Sarah were just talking about. This is going to be a shared use path from Dixon Street in the city to the Shannon Airport area and will be a designated part of the East Coast Greenway route. Next slide. In Stafford, the US 17B Stars Steady intersection and pedestrian improvements. This will be 2 sidewalks, a 5-foot sidewalk along the south side of US 17 from Short Street to Old Forge Drive, and another 5-foot sidewalk approximately 600 feet eastward from Old Forge Drive. Next slide. And in Fredericksburg, Idlewild to VCR Trail connector. This will connect the Idlewild community to the VCR Trail via a 900-foot shared use path with a 70-foot bridge and a crosswalk at Kings Mill Drive. Next slide. Another one in Stafford, Route 1 and Lay Hill Road improvements. There will be 2 sections of sidewalk, one along US 1 in front of the gas station and along north side of Lay Hill Road to Forbes Street. Next slide. And this one is in Spotsylvania, the Route 1 and 208 area. 2 large sections of sidewalk, Lafayette Boulevard to from Southgate Avenue to Spotswood Baptist Church, and US 1 from Market Street to 4 Mile Fork. Next slide. All right, so that was 9 projects with bike ped components. I think that's a pretty good win for our region. What's next? You can see we're at the star section there on the timeline, where the C2B is releasing evaluated projects and a recommended funding scenario. They're going to be holding public hearings and gathering input and considering the evaluated projects for inclusion into the 6-year improvement program. And in June, we'll get the final list of projects. So I'm happy to take any questions, and if any of the locality representatives want to speak more about any particular project, please do so.
Thank you, Carrie. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question. This is Jim Lynch again. I understand that Smart Scale, that we're looking ahead to the 2022 scoring of projects. Is that correct? And I've been told that that applications for 2022 would come due in this coming August time period. Is that about right?
Sorry, Jim, I think I missed the first part of that question.
Yes. We have a small off-road trail project here in King George County that we've been talking to the highway department about, as well as our local county officials, and we understand that that the next round, if I'm using the term right, for projects would be in 2022, and that the application period for those projects would be this coming August. Is that about right?
I think so. Time flies so fast.
It does.
Yeah, that's approximate. It's pretty close if it's off at all, but yeah, it should be around that time.
Yeah,
okay, good.
Biennial, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Carrie,
right.
what's the timing on completing these projects look like?
What's the timing? Well, when they're adopted into the 6-year plan, so ideally 6 years, but
Okay, that's what I was afraid of. Okay.
Yes, smart scale projects that are approved in the 2020 round will be built in 2026 approximately. And so anything that we apply for this fall will be built in 2027 approximately.
Nothing moves quickly.
All right, any other discussion on items 7D?
Hey, Craig, it's Jacob. I'll just do a quick overview on a couple things. That's all right. Okay, so I just wanted to follow up from a few months ago when we discussed some of these projects. There was a project at the intersection. I'm just speaking for Spotsylvania County project specifically. There was a project with intersection improvements at 4 Mile Fork where Route 1, Lafayette, and Courthouse Road come together in the county. And there were sidewalks as part of that on all 4 corners. Earlier, a few months ago, there was a comment made, and be confident that I don't forget these things. There was a very valid comment about the pedestrian activity crossing over Route 208 to the 4 Mile Fork Shopping Center near the light there, at the 4 Mile Fork Shopping Center's entrance near Hard Times and Aldi's and all that. Just know that that is on our radar. I've continued to raise this with our transportation staff as this goes to further design engineering. And we are going to try to pursue something to address that crossing situation there, knowing there's some sidewalks on either side of the streets that are planned with that project. That 4 Mile Fork intersection improvement is estimated for 2026 timeframe. The nice thing about our Lafayette Boulevard projects is they really tie in with the infrastructure, as well as the, as Karen had referenced, the sidewalks going down the Route 1 corridor. We have these sidewalk projects coming in the shorter term at the intersection, but we have sidewalk projects then going up Lafayette Boulevard all the way to the city line, and they're in pieces. The only gap that will remain on the east side of Lafayette Boulevard will be located between Spotswood Baptist Church and School Complex. The church and school recently did their own sidewalks as part of an expansion project. So from the, I guess we're going to say the northern side of that to the southern side, if you will, of the Sheetz gas station, that will be the gap in Lafayette Boulevard at the moment. However, with these smart scale announcements, we have a tremendous extension of sidewalk infrastructure down Lafayette Boulevard, which actually has a lot of pedestrian activity. And then again, when we round the corner and head south on Route 1, we'll get down to Market Street. So that'll be good news in that area. For the widening of Route 2 and 17, again, that is part of the East Coast Greenway system that ties in nicely with the county's plan also for a deep run spur to access the Franklin Crossing historic site along the Rappahannock River. That project will extend from the city line to the Shannon Airport. And I can tell you also that Spotsylvania County Utilities Department is actually looking at an underground utility install down Tidewater Trail. And as part of that project is actually looking to secure recreational trail easements down the corridor. And I believe they also may be looking to try to construct an extension of the East Coast Greenway across the frontage of Slaughter Pen Farm. That is something that's in works. It may be 2029, 2030 on that, but that is something that would extend that system. The only project that we missed on was the Harrison Road VCR trail extension as far as Idlewild or Hazelwild Farm. But we do have some improvements coming up with prior approved transportation alternative funds expected in 2024 to extend the trail from its existing termination point or near there at Salem Church Road up to the intersection of Harrison and Salem Church Road. And we have a round 3 smart scale project that will actually address the crosswalk at that intersection of Harrison and Salem Church Road. We have private development starting on the other side, headed eastward with a Wawa gas station that's going to start building that trail. So we do have a road crossing in the works. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Any more discussion on this item?
Probably the 4.
All right, hearing none, we will move on to agenda item 7E, update on the GWRC Greenway feasibility study. Ms. Carrie Barber.
Thank you. So not much to say about this right now, just letting you know that the current status. I've been in touch with a lot of you local planners, and all the natural trails and shared use paths have been mapped and confirmed by all the jurisdictions. The conservation easement update is near completion. And next slide. That was an example of the map. Next slide. We'll have our first meeting on this in March. We'll look at the big picture and decide what we want from a regional trail system. I'm going to consider maybe sending some surveys out to you all beforehand to determine our priorities and get us ready for this meeting. And that is pretty much all I have to say about that. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Any discussion on? Go ahead, Jim.
Carrie, the list of the trails and all that you mentioned in slide number 1, that's interesting. Is there any way you could email that out to everybody, or everybody who will be participating on the Greenway study, sort of like a read ahead?
Sure, I have it in map form. Yes, I can send it.
Oh, great, perfect. Thank you.
All right, any other discussions or questions? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item 7F, calendar update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, before you is the latest draft meeting schedule for FAMPO's 2021 calendar year. Especially for our newest members, BPAC meets bi-monthly or every other month on the first Thursday at 6 p.m. Recently, the policy committee moved the summer break up to July from August, so that there will be no meetings in July before it was August. So tonight, for you all specifically, there's a proposal, and you can see it. I don't know how clear it is, but the orange horizontal lines There's a mark for the 29th of July, and that has been proposed to you for the July meeting for BPAC, simply because that works best for FAMPO staff. And then you also might want to consider, and this would just be, it is not for now, but for future reference, starting for the 2022 year, starting back up in January, so that you're not off 2 months in a row. So there is not any action required on this, but staff does recommend that you confirm this for the final meeting dates for final publishing, and I can answer any questions on this.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any discussion or question on this item?
Hey, this is Kirsten.
Go ahead, Kirsten.
So just to understand, because we switched over from August to July being the swing month when they weren't going to do something, that we would either lose both July and August to meet and pick back up on September 2nd, or we are being asked whether we would add in the 29th of July so that we're actually meeting June and July, so there's not a break. Is that correct?
Well, it's kind of a break in July because you would usually meet at the beginning of the month. So this is a little bit of a compromise between the two, because basically you would be off for most of July, but it still gives the FAMPO staff time off for that month, for most of the month.
Sure, I totally understand. I think my question would be, is there something that's pressing that time of year? Are there grants or submissions or those sorts of things that would really press us to make sure that we have that meeting, and instead of having both July and August off?
If I could add, we'll be working pretty hard at that point on the 2050 active transportation plan. So I'll probably have more to bring ahead of you, in front of you. 2 months off might be too much.
Fair enough. That's what I was wondering about. Thanks, Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So does it seem that will work for everybody, the 29th of July, and to add a meeting in there?
Yeah.
Okay. So Leah, that sounds like that'll work for us. Is that all you need from us?
Yes, as long as the rest of the year works for you all as well. And those are all the solid orange squares.
Okay. Rest of the committee, is there any issues with the other dates post-July?
You're going to get me in trouble with my wife. April 1st is our anniversary.
We'll give you a pass.
Yeah.
Hey,
April
Stan.
Fool's Day.
Today's my wife's birthday, Stan.
All right, so it sounds like that'll work for us. So we will move forward with the calendar as displayed tonight.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so that will end agenda item 7, and we will move forward to number 8, correspondence. I'm
also on for that, and this is just a long list of all the documents from December. After the December meeting, I sent out requests to localities and agencies for documentation of all the BPAC members and appointments. And I really thank you for the great response. So we've had all of these. I won't go down all the list of who has responded, but it was basically getting us information on letterhead, who was appointed, and if you were going to have any alternates. Something of note is that only Stafford so far has listed an alternate. And because you guys only meet every other month, it might be good to have an alternate if you can spare one, just in the event that one of you cannot make it because you don't meet as frequently. You could be missing some big information. And I can kind of briefly go over some of the agencies and localities that we have not heard back from, and I will be also following up with you all by email to get that documentation. But thank you for everyone who has submitted thus far. We did just recently receive documentation from Stafford County, as was noted, and also Rob Maple for Fred Trails. So we still have outstanding documentation from Caroline County for our chair, Mr. Pennington. Also, we don't have anyone, or we won't be having anyone for City of Fredericksburg, and they are a big part of this organization. So also Virginia Department of Transportation, VDOT. We have Linda Lasut. We have gotten information that she is appointment, but we do not have any documentation to support that. And we would request documentation for Mr. Stan Huey on all your various boards that you are on, and the Disability Resource Center. And I also believe that we don't have documentation from Friends of the Rappahannock. And that would be all.
Lee, this is Linda Lasut from VDOT. If you have that letter, if you can send it to me, I'll have Steve, I'll get it to Stephen tomorrow.
Okay, great. I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll get with the board and we'll get you some.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt.
All right, thank you, and I'll find out what's going on with mine too.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other correspondence?
That wraps it up.
All right, thank you. So now we'll move forward to staff reports.
Sorry, I was muted. So this is your friendly reminder to start thinking about your transportation alternatives candidate projects, all of you localities. I'd like to encourage you all to apply. The funding cycle dates to remember: the portal will open around May 17th. Pre-applications will be due July 17th, and the deadline will be October 1st. So let me know when you start thinking about that, and I will be happy to present your projects to the FAMPO board and the GWRC board to get their endorsements. Also, the Highway Safety Improvement Program is also coming up later this year, August 1st, and the application deadline is November 1st. Just wanted to let you guys know that. The other things to talk about, we have another couple of slides there, Adam, maybe. Yes. So I don't believe Eric is here tonight, but on behalf of FAMPO, I just wanted to thank him on the occasion of his retirement for his years of service to FAMPO and to BPAC and the various committees. He's served on TAC and BPAC for a number of years. So I want us all to thank him for that. I know that his certificate will be delivered to him later next week.
Chair, this is Kirsten.
We'll let Carrie finish up first, real quick.
Fair enough.
That's all right.
Okay. As well, on behalf of FAMPO, we would like to thank Jacob Pastowick for his service to BPAC. We will get you your certificate next week, Jacob. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate that. Have a good day.
Okay, Kirsten, you got a comment?
Sure. I think last time we officially put into the records the thanks to Jacob for his service. I wonder if we might be able to do that same sort of thing for Eric in the notes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why not, Carrie.
Certainly.
All right.
I'm
sorry.
Go ahead. All right. Additionally, I wanted to let you all know that our regional micromobility policy working group will be Jacob, Debbie, Craig, Stan, and I will be reaching out to all of you folks with information in the next week or so, and I greatly appreciate your willingness to work on this group. And we will have some reports out to you later this year, so I'm excited about that. Lastly, I want to let you guys know that Matthew Lehane presented an overview of his methodology and preliminary findings with streetlight data bike ped counts that he presented to you guys last time. He did that at the state bike ped committee meeting yesterday, and that was well received. And he is still collecting data, and he'll boy, I'm tongue-tied this evening. He will present to us next month, letting us know how all of that went. I just wanted to let you know that he did present at the state Bike Ped Committee yesterday. And that is it for staff reports.
All right, thank you, Carrie. So we'll move on to member reports. I guess we'll go county by county first to organizations. Brian, you have anything for Stafford?
Just a couple things real quick. So we've been meeting with transportation staff to talk about a few things, one of which is there was a VTrans multimodal grant application that was put in. This was specifically for multimodal planning in the Route 17 corridor west of 95. And I think the focus there is going to be to provide some recommendations for Fred on transit in that corridor. So that's all right. Keeping our fingers crossed on that one. Also, some small victories for trail development in the area. We had a project, a 7-Eleven at Leland and Deacon Road, that came in for a conditional use permit. So we were able to negotiate with them the construction of shared use paths along the frontage of their property. Also, a while back, we had a rezoning up along Mine Road, just south of 610. And we were able to negotiate a shared use path along about a quarter mile of Mine Road with that project. So that will eventually be going in. And we're also talking about downtown Stafford, which is a big project. This is sort of the identity of Stafford that's being discussed here. It's generally going to be focused in the area southwest of Route 1 and Courthouse Road. It's supposed to be, mixed use, very urban kind of setting. And definitely we're trying to incorporate bike ped planning in that effort as well. So that's going to be a bit of ongoing effort. We'll see how that shakes out. But our bike ped plan from 2019 is definitely making some good recommendations and allowing us to incorporate some of these shared use paths and whatnot as we receive rezonings and conditional use permits, and just looking at planning in general. That was it for me.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from Stafford members have any reports? All right, do we have anyone from Fredericksburg with Eric not here? No. Spotsylvania, Jacob?
Nothing additional from me, thank you.
All right, Kristen, Spotsylvania?
Yeah, I have a few notes, some community feedback that I gathered from some local social media groups. There's a little bit of overlap with the city because a lot of the people in Spotsy are utilizing Fredericksburg trails right now. So I have been getting a lot of feedback from people in Spotsylvania who are concerned about, they're really excited about new crosswalks and sidewalks, but lighting around the crosswalks and sidewalks makes them less likely to use it. They feel like it's less safe, especially because it's getting darker earlier. So that seems to be a major concern that I'm hearing a lot. And also speed around some of our new crosswalks and sidewalks, especially Levels and Courthouse Road. They say that they're so close to the road and the speeds are a deterrent as far as especially letting children use them, but even themselves. Let me see. There was some feedback about the VCR, which is Spotsy and Fredericksburg, people saying that there's not enough lighting and a desire for possibly something like the UMW blue light phones, because in the evenings, especially female trail users were saying they felt unsafe in certain areas. Some issues with connectivity in the sidewalks, which the things that Jacob talked about seem to be really positive changes, but connecting residential areas to commerce is an issue in several areas. And just more desire for trails and walking. A lot of people complained about having to go to use the downtown VCR trail, and the fact that that's been so busy lately, which makes some of them feel uncomfortable as far as safety and distancing, and the fact that so many cyclists are on it. And when you're walking with small children, that can feel unsafe if people are riding at faster speeds, which we talked a little bit about at the last meeting. So that's kind of the feedback that I'm getting so far.
All right, thank you. King George, do we have someone for King George here tonight?
Yeah, Chris Clark, I have no report, sir.
All right, thank you. I guess that leaves me for counties. Yeah, I'm getting to organizations in a second, Stan.
Okay.
All right. So for Caroline, I know Eric's not here, but I do want to make a statement appreciating Eric. I met him 5 years ago when I moved to Caroline, started working for Caroline, and learned a lot from him and appreciate Eric. Other than that, for Caroline, not necessarily bicycle pedestrian related right now, but we got one of our first big box stores under construction in Caroline with a Tractor Supply. And that's hopefully going to lead to two connecting commercial developments, which is going to allow us to have some more bike and ped improvements in the Ladysmith area. So that's under construction now, and we're looking forward to more of a shopping center coming into that area and more development in the Ladysmith area. So let's move forward to organizations. Mr. Lynch, do you have anything for Friends of the Rappahannock?
Sure. So a couple weeks ago, I went on a bike ride on the VCR trail, and I was just appalled by how much litter there was along there. So one great thing about my job is I can just decide to do a river cleanup, invite a bunch of my friends, and knock it out. So I'll be setting up river cleanup, or I guess more like a trail cleanup along the VCR trail, probably out of Alum Spring Park in the next month or so, and I will be sure and let the BPAC committee know that I'm doing that in case any of you guys want to come out and volunteer or cross promote or anything like that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lynch. Mr. Huey, anything from your 4 or 5 organizations?
Yeah, the Virginia Bike Federation is working very hard on one particular bill. It's a cycling safety bill. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of it. It's House Bill 2262 and Senate Bill 1263. And that's got several moving parts, but basically one of the key elements of this is it will require a full lane change for traffic that's passing a cyclist on the road. And also it involves allowing for what's called an Idaho stop, where a cyclist can slow down and verify that an intersection is clear and go through a stop sign. It's felt that this would keep inertia going and allow them not to slow down as much and make it through the intersection more rapidly. I've got a description of that on our website. Looks like we're getting sort of hung up in the Senate, and I'm going to have a letter going out to about 800 or 900 cyclists in the area where we are encouraging them to contact their senators on that. So just some legislative affairs that we're working on.
All right, thank you, Stan. Jim, do you have anything?
Yes, I do. Mr. Chairman, we have a new acting manager from the National Park Service for the Potomac Heritage Trail. Her name is Ann O'Neill. She will be on a 120-day detail, as I understand it, but I'm almost positive it'll last longer than that. She will be coming on board on I think the 20th of this month, and I've already gotten an email off to her asking her to come to visit us in the Fredericksburg area. So so she'll be able to have an on-the-ground look at how the Potomac Heritage Trail passes through our region, and I will let our friends at FAMPO be aware of that trip, and I would like to take the opportunity to introduce her to them, and Kirsten, I also want to make sure to introduce her to you in her new role, although she's pretty active in the NPS. So my guess is you probably already acquainted with her.
Yes, Anne's actually been doing a lot with the Potomac Heritage Trail for some time, so she's not new to it. She's been filling in since Don's retirement.
That's
so this
right.
is just a formal announcement for her, but yes, very familiar with her. Thank you.
Very good. Excellent. Okay. And also a lot of us are probably aware of an organization called Ainsley's Angels. Ainsley's Angels has its goal and its purpose of getting wheelchair-bound people out in the community, and they have these wheelchairs that they ride on, that they have teams that push them in races. It's really a great opportunity for people who are really mobility impaired and cannot get out, to give them opportunity to get out in healthful environments and be part of a team and a community. Where this has to do with trails, we will be hosting on the Dog and Railroad Trail an Ainsley's Angels event this coming Saturday, where they're going to have organized trail runs for the Ainsley's Angels wheelchair athletes. We believe this is the first example of an off-road event for our wheelchair athletes friends, and we really do appreciate Ainsley's Angels joining with us to host this activity, and we are real enthusiastic about it. If anybody isn't on our email list for our newsletter of the Railroad Trail, if you would let me know, and I will add you on there, because we will have a big article about this activity in our next newsletter, which will be coming out in at the end of the month. So, Mr. Chairman, that's about it from here, and as always, appreciate the opportunity to comment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Kirsten, you want to go next for the parks?
Sure. Nothing particularly new trail-wise, but just overall with the change of administration, it's probably you all are aware of it because it's been in the news. We have a new mask mandate when anyone is in a federal building or on federal lands. I just want to clarify for some folks, because I think there might be like, my God, I'm out there on the trail all by myself and I got to wear a mask. What? No, it really is when you're in an indoor setting. Absolutely. We're going to be asking you inside buildings to wear your face coverings. When you're out on the trails, if you are with anyone else that's from your household, of course, you don't need to wear a mask. You wouldn't be doing that with your mom or your dad or your spouse or what have you. But if you're outdoors and you're unable to meet the CDC guidelines for distancing, i.e. that 6-foot separation, we're asking you to please mask up at that point in time. So an example would be Old Faithful. when you're standing around an Old Faithful, that's such a crowd out there, you're not going to be able to maintain the 6 feet. We're currently looking around the park for us here in the 8,000 acres that we have, if there's any space that we think fits within that possibility of having that level of even seasonally number of folks locally that are just going to crush on us. We don't think that we've got that, but if anyone on this call has any concerns, you're kind of like, man, it's always on the sunken road or whatever. If you've got a place that you feel that we may want to go ahead and highlight for the public to be prepared to wear a face covering outdoors, please let me know. We want to be thoughtful. We just don't want to be over crazy about it either. Thank you. That's all.
All right, thank you, Kirsten. Ms. Lasute, do you have anything for VDOT?
Oh, please call me Linda. No, I wanted to thank Carrie for giving a very thorough and comprehensive overview of Smart Scale. I had sent her just 2 descriptions of the ones that were specifically bike pedestrian types, but she successfully captured all the bike ped components out of 11 that were applications that were funded. So I'd like to thank her for doing that research. And I know she probably did most of the applications, so maybe it was a little bit easier, but it was a nice presentation. And Pete Buttigieg, can't say his last name, is currently on MSNBC, and I was looking at closed captioning for just a little bit, and apparently he's a huge high-speed rail proponent. So, we should probably make sure that we keep abreast of any kind of rail projects that would go near here, through here. But other than that, no, I just wanted to wish everyone have a good night. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Linda. Lee, anything with Ride Connect?
Let me find the unmute button. Yes, I actually do. I have 2 things. First of all, I do want to express appreciation to Eric Nelson for all of his help, both for GW Ride Connect and myself personally over the years. I wanted to do that also because he's been around for so long and he has always been so helpful. So I did want to say that. I also wanted to thank FAMPO's Stacy Feint for helping set up travel training for the Fred Bus for the GW Ride Connect staff. Healthy Generations does a good job with this. So if you know anyone who is unsure about taking the Fred Bus, they don't know how it works or has any kind of questions, it's a free service that Healthy Generations does, and it's pretty awesome. I can send you any information that you need on that. So, and of course, always thank you, Carrie, for putting on a great meeting.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lee. Joy with PRTC, do you have anything?
So wasn't really prepared to give much tonight, but we will be doing a schedule change in May. What we have found recently is that our Stafford route is growing the most with our ridership, and we feel that it's because slugging has pretty much died off during COVID, and they don't have any other options down there. We have saved revenue time on the highway because of the traffic reduction. So we were able to actually invest that back into the Stafford route at no cost. And we will be adding an additional 6 trips, 3 a.m. and 3 p.m. for both Stafford routes in May. And thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone any organization I forgot, any member of the committee that I forgot is not a citizen attending the meeting?
Hey, this is Rob Maple from Fred Trails. We have nothing major to support, or nothing major to broadcast tonight. Definitely have some big things in the wheels that are running right now, and hopefully next meeting have some really big news to share. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Any other organizations that I happen to miss?
Hi, this is Debbie with the Disability Resource Center. I don't have anything other than to say Ainsley's Angels is a wonderful organization and allows people that are wheelchair users to participate in walks and runs, and they often are looking for volunteer pushers. So if you like to participate in 5Ks and things like that, look them up. They're a great organization.
All right, thank you. Any other organizations I've missed? All right, hearing none, I do want to make a statement real quick. I wanted to thank Jacob for being the chairman for the last year. And I hope I can run the meetings half as good as he did. He provides a lot of information and a lot of knowledge when it comes to the bike trails, and we appreciate everything Jacob's done. With that being said, I will accept a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I so move.
I'll second. This is Linda.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, and we'll see you in a couple months.
Thank you.
Good night.
Nice
Good
job,
night.
sir. Thanks.
Good
Good night, everybody. Thank you
Good
so
night,
much.
all.